Great. It's so nice to have a lot of first-time applicants in the room today, and also some of you who've applied before and are looking for some more guidance for your next application. We'd be happy to share some tips today for crafting a strong application or reapplication, and welcoming back some former grantees too. Okay, great. Welcome. Well, let's get into the webinar. So my name is Kirsten Vega. I'm an Associate Program Officer with California Humanities, and I want to welcome you to our Grantseeker workshop. Today, we're going to be sharing a little bit about the current funding opportunities that you can apply to in the coming season at California Humanities, actually the coming year. We're going to go through the year 2024. The way this webinar works is we'll sort of glide through an overview of California Humanities, and each program officer will introduce you to their grant program, giving you an insight into eligibility guidelines and some recently funded projects so you can get a sense of what these programs have been supporting lately and how your project might fit in. And then we'll stop along the way to give you some tips for crafting a strong application. Our grants manager, Brett, is on the line. He'll give you some technical information about putting your application together in our grants portal. And we'll take Q&A breaks after each section. So if you have a question about CDP, for instance, you might want to hold on to it until after the CDP presentation, and then we'll have one big Q&A session at the end. Unfortunately, the chat is closed today because we sometimes get a high amount of activity, so we ask you to please use the Q&A. You can ask a question at any time. We'll either type an answer for you or answer you verbally at the Q&A breaks. We're also recording today, and we will automatically send you a copy of the session. If you need a copy for yourself or some colleagues, it will be sent to you. Okay, so California Humanities is an independent nonprofit that is the partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. So every state has a humanities council that's funded in this fashion. Ours has 2 locations in the state. We have an office in Oakland and an office in LA, but we make grants and programs to every congressional district in California. So since about 1975, California Humanities has been making grants to humanities projects through the state, but also conducting our own programs and projects, community reads, forums, conversations about California history, present, and future. We're still doing this kind of work, and today we'll be mainly focusing on grants, but sign up for our e-news at a link we'll share in the chat to keep in touch with events that we're putting on and our grantees are putting on all over California every week. Actually, a lot of events going on, particularly in May. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, Beth Segura, our operations manager. If you have any technical problems, you can send Beth an email. I'm here with Brett Connor, our grants manager, Felicia Kelly, project and evaluation director. Felicia works on project grants and library innovation lab. John Lightfoot, director of media and journalism programs. John is your contact for all things California Documentary Project and also the Emerging Journalism Fellowship and much more. Lucena Lauvalle, program officer who runs literature and medicine as well as Humanities for All quick grants. And I manage the Civics and Humanities Middle Grades Grants Program. So if that's your interest, feel free to follow up with me after the webinar. Okay, and over to Lucena.
Hi, thank you, Kirsten. And welcome everyone today. I'm so happy that you can be with us. I wanted to just kind of kick off one big part of what we'll be talking about today, and that is the public humanities. And that's a question that we get a whole lot, and it's central to all of the different grant programs we'll be exploring today. So if you're familiar with the word humanities, maybe you've heard about that term in relationship to different classes or courses you took when you were in school at any age, at any grade level, and you see the word public next to it. It's really, really important to kind of spend some time, noting that our grant programs, everything we'll be talking about today, is really rooted in providing humanity-centered learning experiences that take place outside of formal education. It can work in conjunction and intersect with formal education, but really these are humanities-focused learning experiences that are available to all people at all age levels, at all levels of education, etc. So as we'll explore through all of our grant programs, these are projects that have a core in the humanities. They touch on those big subject areas that, are that include history, literature, philosophy, jurisprudence, etc. So many big subject areas. But the exciting and the important thing about the grants that we'll be sharing with you today is that these big explorations of these important issues are going to be made available to the public with as few barriers as possible, and also in a participatory and audience-centered format. So I wanted just to kind of begin our conversation with that important piece of information, because that is really at the heart of our grant making and programming, and we're going to be talking about it a lot today. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Kirsten, and she can kind of guide us through the rest of our presentation.
Thanks, Luciana. And also, I find it very charming that we're both wearing striped shirts today. Okay, so we won't go over these programs today, but we encourage you to take a look. Maybe you or someone you know is interested. Literature in Medicine is a program run by California Humanities in hospitals throughout California. They are reading and discussion groups that serve doctors, nurses, and medical staff through the experience of reading about patient experience, the experience of being ill, and works of literature, poetry, memoir, graphic novels, and having discussions about the patient experience and medicine. So the medical humanities are the focus of that program. We also are running a program called the Emerging Journalist Fellowship. This is meant for community college students who are interested in a career in journalism and media making, whether audio, podcast, storytelling and journalism, or written local news journalism. These fellowships are at a number of community colleges throughout the state. You can talk to John if you'd like to know more. And then I wanted to point you to Tools of the Trade, which is a video bank of webinars California Humanities made about how to do public humanities projects in innovative ways, using things like humanities advisors, reaching new and underrepresented audiences, and thinking about accessibility in your programming. These are meant to help our grantees and our colleagues in the field looking to innovate in their public humanities programs. These are the programs we'll cover today, and without ado, we will get into some key terms with Brett.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, so these terms are gonna come up today in our in this program, as well as if you do begin an application with us. These are things that you will see and phrases that we will reference. So the first three are different roles that we collect within an application. So the first the first one, project director, that is the person on your proposal that is the main person in charge of executing your proposed project. The project director also acts as our main person of contact throughout the application process, as well as if your application is funded. The authorizing official is someone at your organization who can sign off on your application, who states, yes, everything, all the data that you've included in your application and your project is valid, is true. Depending on the size of your organization, this might be a grants manager, a development director, an executive officer, president of the board. And if you're with a college or a university, it's probably someone in the sponsored projects office or in the grants office. The humanities advisor, depending on which program you're applying for, some programs may not require a humanities advisor, and others may require one or two of them. Humanities advisors are just someone that is an expert in your field, in their field, who can help you articulate the humanities themes and methods that you want to use in your project. Now, fiscal sponsor and subrecipient go hand in hand. If you don't know what these are, you probably don't have a fiscal sponsor. So if you are an individual humanities practitioner or an individual artist, you will need to use a 501c3 organization to act as your fiscal sponsor. You then are the subrecipient. In a similar vein, if you work for an organization that's a nonprofit, but your nonprofit is on the small side and doesn't necessarily have federally recognized 501c3 tax exempt status and a tax ID, those organizations will also need a fiscal sponsor who is, again, has that legal 501c3 tax exempt status that's federally recognized. All right, again, and then that organization that doesn't have that status is the subrecipient. So most of you who are coming to us with humanities programs, most of you are already 501c3s and won't necessarily need to go through those fiscal sponsor questions. But if you are using a fiscal sponsor when the application asks you, if you are using one, you answer yes, and then some of the questions are updated to make sure that we're capturing your information as well as your fiscal sponsor's information. The last one is matching funds. Again, this might be old hat if you are used to applying for grants and used to the grant making world. Certain grant programs require matching funds and certain programs do not. So just for example's sake, if you are awarded a grant of $20,000 and that grant has a 1-to-1 match, that means that you're also required to come up with $20,000 from somewhere else, be it cash donations, other grant makers, in-kind goods and services. So that's what matching funds mean. So when you see a 1-to-1 match, that just means the same amount that you are granted from us or you're proposed to be granted from us, you'll have to come up with that same amount from other places. All right, so who can apply? I've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but we accept applications from nonprofit organizations, local or state government entities like universities, museums, libraries, tribal governments. So you either have to fit one of these municipal or government entity or have that 501c3, a federally recognized tax exempt status. Most of our grant programs does require that your organization, your fiscal sponsor, be located within the state of California. The only thing that that rule doesn't apply to is our documentary grant programs. The third bullet, like I said before, if you are an individual, you will need to use a fiscal sponsor in order to apply with us. Now, applicants that you're applying now, you should not already have an active grant going. We only want to grant one grant at a time as a project director and as your organization. There are special organizations that do have specific approval from us that they can submit multiple applications at a time. Those folks already know who they are. If you have a question about that, just email me one off and we can discuss that, or I can tell you whether your organization has already been pre-approved. But like I said, if you are, your fiscal sponsor already knows that. But you as a project director, regardless, cannot have an active grant, or you can also not have a pending application in at the same time. You can only have one pending application in, and you can only have one active grant with us at the same time. The last one, organizations and project directors that have previously been awarded a Humanities for All project grant or a Humanities for All quick grant are required to wait a 1-year waiting period of their previous final report before they can apply again. All right, is this mine too, Kristen? This is just a little snapshot of our website here. So if you go to calhum.org and you go to the Funding Opportunities tab in the middle, this is kind of a good one-stop shop. We call it grants at a glance. So you see a little matrix of all of our grant programs, when the next deadline is, what our annual deadlines typically tend to be. They change a little bit from year to year. And then a little bit of the key features of each of those grant lines and who to contact if you have questions about any of those. So let's take a little bit of a question break. I don't see anything right now, but I'll give you another second if anyone wants to post anything in. Just kind of, we're going to get in next to talking about your the very specific programs. But if you have anything general, go ahead and type them in. And if you don't if we don't answer it right away, don't worry, hold on to it. We will get to it. Whether some really good questions we'll want to hold on to and answer them live for everybody. So if I don't answer your question in the Q&A box right away, that's fine. Just be patient. We definitely will get to you.
I'm seeing one question here. Oh, this is a good one. Can you have an NEH grant at the same time as a California Humanities grant? Yes, you can. The only asterisk is you cannot use NEH grant funds to make your match with California Humanities. We're not allowed to have federal funds match our grant funds. Do you tend to support mid to established project artists? We do support humanities projects in kind of mid-career or mid-establishment stage, and we can talk more about that. I'm guessing you might be thinking of CDP. John can talk more about that in a few slides. Okay, I'm seeing some questions, but they're not maybe the general eligibility questions that we would take here normally. So let's move along for now, and we'll circle back after we learn about Humanities for All. So Felicia.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah. Hi, everybody. So nice to be with you this morning. Yeah, today we're going to share a little information with you about our Humanities for All Grants program suite. This encompasses 2 tracks, quick grants and project grants. And this is a grant program that we've had in effect since 2016, continuing our longstanding tradition of supporting a wide variety of locally initiated public humanities programs of many, many different types across the state, conducted by museums, libraries, cultural organizations, arts providers, educational institutions, many, many, many different types of partners and programs. So let's move along and talk a little bit about some of the elements here. Lucina, were you going to join in on this?
I can, definitely. Sorry, I thought this was yours, but I'll jump in. So there's a few criteria that are central to our Humanities for All grants. And we'll talk about the details of each in just a few moments, but really the connective thread that is central to both of the grant lines is that first, the programs that are supported by these grants are participatory. So that can include a variety of different modalities, but ultimately what really we're looking for are programs that have some sort of participation amongst the community members that are being served and also the organization or project lead that is implementing that program. So we've supported things like community conversations, public forums, dialogues, etc. We have a very, very extensive list of examples in our guidelines and also on our website if you're interested in learning more about what participatory looks like or means to our grants. The other element is that the projects have an interpretive element, that there's some sort of analysis, some sort of framing or context development about whatever that subject matter is that the program is exploring. So this can include exhibitions of many, many sorts, whether permanent, traveling, digital, physical, site-specific, or many, many, many other formats. In addition to lectures, presentations, different types of learning experiences where that analysis, that context setting, and that knowledge creation is happening. And then, of course, lastly, that the programs are narrative, that there's some sort of storytelling that's happening, whether it is in the form of a book discussion, a film discussion, cultural programming, oral history creation, or oral history analysis in some way. There's many, many, many ways that the narrative element comes up. But as we mentioned, this is something that will be central to both of the programs in Humanities for All. And I'll just jump in and say a little bit about quick grants. So quick grants are the 1-year projects. So these are a shorter duration. We provide between $1,000 to $5,000 in funding, and there's no match required. We've made some exciting changes in terms of when you can submit your quick grant proposal. And we now have a rolling deadline. So you can submit your proposal at any time. The review process takes between 10 to 12 weeks, so that's just something to be aware of. And I would encourage folks to take a look at the guidelines because we do have a few other criteria that are now being included. And first and foremost, these grants are now open to organizations with budgets that are under $500,000 a year. If you do have a fiscal sponsor, that cap, that $500,000 cap is for the applicant organization. It does not apply to fiscal sponsors. So I just wanted to mention that. And we'll be having a webinar next week. So if you'd like to learn more, you can take a look at our website and sign up for the Quick Grant webinar. And I'm going to pass it over to Felicia.
Okay, thanks, Lucinda. Yeah, so project grants fund many, many types of public humanities programs. I'll show you an example of one recent project in a couple of minutes, but these grants support projects that are up to 2 years in duration. That means the grant period gives you the opportunity of doing a project that's, a little bit longer. You don't have to use the full 2 years if you don't want to, but you do have that opportunity. These grants provide between $10,000 and $25,000. One-to-one match is required. So as Brett said, you will need to show us that during the grant period, you will be able to use other sources of support to augment the grant funds that we'll be providing you. And again, those can be cash, they can be in kind, they can be, calculating the value of staff time or volunteer labor or anything that's contributed to the project. But you do need to think about that and anticipate that as part of your budget. We have 2 rounds a year. The next deadline is coming up in July. We'll be posting new guidelines and application information at the beginning of June and holding an informational webinar where we'll really go into a lot of depth about the requirements and the process early in June. I think it's the 6th of June. But there's a link on the webpage where you can sign up for that if you'd like to, really learn more. And we will be making some changes to this program too. We will be moving to what's called a letter of intent process. This is something new for us, where applicants will be asked to submit a very short description of the project that they'd like to pursue, provide some, cursory information. And then we'll be reviewing those and inviting a group of selected applicants to come back and submit a full proposal later on in the summer. And that is a change for us. So if you've looked at this program before or you're interested in this program, really be sure that you check out the new information once it's available at the beginning of June, because the process will be different this time around. Okay, just to share with you an example of one really great project that's actually going on right now. So if any of you are in the Monterey Bay area or can get over there before the end of June to participate in some of the activities at this wonderful More Than Cars Celebrating Lowrider Culture project is doing right now over in Watsonville. We encourage you to do that. And I think this is a really great project because it kind of illustrates those three big ideas that Lucena was talking about a minute ago, how we support projects that are participatory, that include interpretive elements, and that largely center around the exploration of narratives. So More Than Cars is a 3-month-long series of cultural events. Started in March and it's going on through the end of June. That's organized by the Watsonville Film Festival, which is a nonprofit organization, cultural organization based in Watsonville, in partnership with the Pajaro Valley Arts Council, local car clubs, lowrider car clubs, and supported by scholars and culture bearers who are knowledgeable about this really interesting cultural tradition. So our grant has provided support to the film festival to explore the creative legacy of lowriding through a series of film screenings, talks by filmmakers and scholars, an oral history project being conducted in collaboration with faculty and students at Cal State University, Monterey Bay, school visits, and a really great art exhibit that features artwork contributed by more than 50 artists, both locals and people from farther afield, and 5 car clubs. And you can see some examples of the artwork on the slide there, and one of the contributing artists. So really, really wonderful, fun, engaging, lively project that's also really delving into some very interesting history and cultural knowledge, all of which, of course, is informed by humanities insights and perspectives. Okay, so over to you, Lucena.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to flag another project that happened a couple months ago up in Merced is a project that was called History and Songs, led by a musician by the name of Dr. Julian Saporiti, and he goes by the name Nono Boy. And this is an amazing project that used very traditional historical and humanities-based research methods, which included oral history, historical research, looking at documentary primary sources, and included the element of songwriting and singing and performance. And so really the focus of Nono Boy's performances center on a fair amount of field research that documents different aspects of Asian American life in the United States. And so before he will do a performance, he'll actually go to a community and conduct oral histories with elders and community members, and then using the format of American folk music and American roots music, he'll create, these original songs that draw on the experiences of the communities that he's highlighting and that he's exploring. And it's really great. And I would recommend, if anyone hasn't checked out his music before, he's performed, Nono Boy has performed on NPR and has a recording with the Smithsonian Folklife Center. So very, very cool. But I think it's a great illustration of how humanities methods and community center practices can come together in a really innovative, but also like very timeless format.
I don't see any questions at the moment, but as you think of them, please go ahead and type them in to the box, and we'll address them at these breaks. But next, let's go into this documentary project.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm John Lightfoot, Director of Media and Journalism Programs. And as Brett mentioned, I'll talk about the California Documentary Project Grant Program. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with CDP, what we call it, if we could have the next slide, please. CDP is a competitive grant program that supports film, audio, and interactive media projects about California subjects and issues, and that use the humanities to provide context, depth, and perspective. Thank you. And as the slide says, it really seeks to, document California in all its complexity. So challenging subjects are just fine. We're open to any subject matter. It's really more about how you treat the subject and approach the subject. And that's where the humanities come in. So we do require that projects incorporate humanities advisors throughout to consult with in order to inform the project director or the project team about the subject from as many diverse perspectives as possible. Thank you. We currently have two categories, the research and development and production. And research and development grants are up to $15,000. They require that one-to-one match that Brett mentioned, require humanities advisors, and the deadline's in November of 2024. Production is up to $50,000, similar situation with a match, and humanities advisors, and it has the same deadline. It's not an uncommon question for people to ask, how to make the real distinction between the two, and it really comes down to if you have media, a work sample that you feel adequately represents what you hope to do with the project moving forward, then that would point you towards production. If you don't, that would point you towards research and development. And we can talk about that in more detail if anybody has questions, but that's just the broad overview. I think there's one important point to make though, and that is that despite as an organization funding media for many years, pretty much since we were founded in the 70s, we're not a media organization, we're a public humanities organization. So our emphasis is always going to be on the stories you're telling, how you're telling them, how you're informing yourself to tell them, and then ultimately what audiences will take away from it. How are you helping to inform people about the subjects and stories that you're telling? They ideally do two basic things, and one is to validate and amplify the lives and experiences of the people who are the primary storytellers, while at the same time reaching and engaging audience members who may or may not be familiar with the subject at all, may actively, I don't know, have a wrong perspective or wrong take on the subject, and through the project, their perspectives can be broadened and they can be informed. So that's the goal, that they work on those two levels. And one of the best ways to learn about what an organization like California Humanities supports is to look at the projects that have been funded over the past few years. And I'm just going to highlight a couple here really quickly. The first is a film called New Wave, and this is a project that received both R&D and production funding from us, which is an option, of course. And it's a film that really tells the story of how new wave music in Orange County spread through the Vietnamese diaspora in the 1980s and helped build community and identity among refugee youth. And obviously, this is a California-centric story, but it's also a national story. It connects to communities throughout the United States, and that's one of the strengths in particular. It is premiering this summer at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York, and will be screening in California soon. Don't have specific details on that, but we look forward to that happening. And then a very current or very recent audio project that was supported in this past round is called When We All Get to Heaven. And this is an audio documentary from director Lynn Gerber that is looking at a church in San Francisco serving primarily an LGBTQ congregation during the AIDS crisis. and how they recorded sermons for people who could not attend the church services in person. And that archive of audio is the source for this documentary, this audio documentary moving forward. It's currently in production. Again, it was just funded in this past round, but we're really excited to see it come together. It's a really powerful project. And I'm open to any questions if there are any.
There are none at the moment.
Okay. I'll stand by.
All right, Felicia.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Yeah, okay, so I know at least one person expressed interest in learning more about Library Innovation Lab. So just quickly want to share a little bit about this program. It launched in 2017, so it's now in its 8th year. This is a program, hybrid professional development and public programming grant program that provides what we call learn by doing professional development experience for a cohort of 10 public programming librarians or library staff members every year that enables them to research, plan, implement, and assess a new public humanities project in their library, in their community that will engage immigrants or a specific group of immigrants in their community through public humanities work. The participants develop skills, gain confidence, make connections with peers in other libraries across the state and colleagues. It's a really, really great professional development experience. So far, 84 librarians have participated in this. And along with that professional development experience goes a $5,500 grant to support the design and implementation of a small-scale, short-term public humanities project in the fall of that year. So a very compressed programming window. Okay, so the next slide, this just shows you some of the different kinds of project activities, what we call outputs, many, many different types of activities, everything from, hands-on, art and craft making experiences, oral history projects that enable immigrants to record and share their experiences. A lot of projects that are focused on passing along cultural traditions and histories to the next generation, fostering connections between different generations within immigrant communities, as well as activities that really connect immigrants with other community members, non-immigrants in communities, in order to foster and support the development of more inclusive communities in our state and really promote greater empathy and understanding for the experience of newcomers to California on the part of people who may have been here longer. So really wonderful programs. As John said, I'd recommend that anybody who's interested in this take a look at the list on our website of the projects that librarians have done in the past. It's just a really, really wonderful set of different kinds of public humanities projects. So our next deadline, this is an annual deadline. Our next deadline will be next winter. If you are interested, feel free to contact Kirsten, my partner in crime on this program, and or me, and we'll be putting out new guidelines and application materials in the fall. This program is only open to application by California public libraries, though unfortunately not academic or school libraries, or libraries serving organizations like a Friends group can also serve as the applicant of record.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Okay, well, do let us know if you have questions about Library Innovation Lab, and Felicia and I can follow up with you. We can also collect them at the end of the webinar. Okay, lastly, I'd like to introduce you to California Humanities' newest grant program. This is the Civics and Humanities Middle Grades Grants, going now into its second year. We've just made awards for 2024, hoping to do so again next winter. The goal of Civics and Humanities Middle Grades Grants is to better resource middle schools and communities to help middle school students find a sense of identity in their communities through civic learning, civic experiences that use the humanities. So these grants award between $5,000 and $15,000 to education projects around California that are really doing student-led educational work. So projects that put students at the center of their own curriculum, whether they're choosing city problems to research or historical questions to dig into deeper, or developing their own essays, photography exhibits, short films, podcasts. In some ways, these projects all tend to center student voice and civic learning in the community. These grants can go to any nonprofit, public school, public agency, as usual with our grant program, so long as they're a nonprofit entity, both in the classroom and in the community. So there are two strains here. The planning grants go for a year, and they are $5,000 awards. The implementation grants are an 18-month project period, and the awards can range between $7,000 and $15,000. We do require a match on the implementation. We have full guidelines that detail eligibility on our website. We're anticipating making another set of grants next winter. This is the tentative deadline. Keep your eye on our e-news if you're interested in applying, or set up a meeting with me. I just want to quickly profile two of our recent grantees. So this planning grant is Do You Know the Way to San Jose by the Lobo School of Innovation. This project is hosted by the Quimby Middle School in San Jose. It's bringing students into History Park in San Jose and inviting them to do their own research on the history of their communities, particularly of groups that have been underrepresented in History Park's telling of the past, of San Jose's past, do their own research, and develop podcast and audio stories about the history of their city, and then present them to the community and to each other. That's in the planning stage. For implementation, I wanted to share with you a really wonderful civic learning project. This is the City of San Diego. The City of San Diego is working on they're running a program for unhoused and foster middle school students to provide them with an introduction to public service and city government. So this summer and next summer, students from middle schools in San Diego will have a chance to work with city employees. Oh, my mouse. Work with city employees and learn with them, interning in departments like fire, library, and police. They'll be asked to research the kinds of problems that cities deal with and come up with solutions or questions of their own. The students are provided with stipends so they can buy professional clothing, and they're encouraged then to apply for paid, this is also paid, but paid city internships when they turn 16, and encouraged to consider a career in public service. And through writing, they also engage in humanities reflections about city life and urban planning. Very cool program. We have a full list of recently granted projects on our website. I encourage you to take a look. Thanks, Beth, for putting links in the chat to all of these resources. And now, Rat, I'm just glancing at the questions. Should we, do you think, move along to technical?
Yeah, these are all kind of general, nothing program specific. So wherever the best place is you want to do.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead to the end. Thank you everyone for your questions, and please keep asking them. We're going to take them all once we get through this next section.
All right, so how to apply. That very top banner on this screenshot is from our webpage, calhum.org. So you can always find the entrance to the grant portal by going to our webpage first. If you have applied with us before and you plan to apply with us again, go ahead and use that same username and password that you have previously used. And you'll be given a main menu of all of the different programs, and you can select what you want to apply for. So within all of our applications, the technical requirements are pretty similar. So there'll always be some sort of an application form with fill in the blanks and drop down boxes and check boxes and that sort of thing. There'll always be a proposal narrative where you'll need to write answers to specific prompts. There'll always be some sort of a budget that you will have to either attach as an Excel file or using our template, or else in some of our smaller, simpler programs, there's a simple form that you'll just fill in the blank, as well as a narrative that accompanies that budget. Also is a certification, like I said before, that authorizing official, that person at your organization who can say, yes, I put my stamp of approval on this. All the information I am submitting is accurate. Now, depending on the grant program, there might be a couple other things that we ask you to submit via the portal. Depending on how you answer certain questions in the application, other questions or other attachments may be required. So if you, for instance, in a documentary project, we're going to ask you for media work samples. If you're applying for a project grant, we might ask you for any supplemental materials that might enhance your application. We might ask you for a timeline of your proposed activities so we can see how detailed your work plan is over the next year, 2, 3, whatever it may be. And then if you are a fiscally sponsored project, we will ask for your memo of understanding or your fiscal sponsorship agreement, whatever sort of legally binding agreement that you have with your fiscal sponsor. So please, we are here to help you. We're kind of like this little customer service team, as well as leading programming in California. So we are here to support you one-on-one. Don't be afraid to email and call us. But there's also these wonderful resources that we have. Like today, we have these webinars that are live, or they're recorded and posted on our YouTube. On our website and inside the grant portal, we always have frequently asked questions that are specific to each individual grant line. We also give you samples of funded proposals so that you can kind of get an idea of what a successful proposal looks like. You have one-to-one support from any and all of us for whatever you need. And then, as Kirsten mentioned, there's a Tools of the Trade video bank that can help you along with programming resources. Application tips. So make sure your project is a good fit. So make sure you are really reading those guidelines documents that we publish for every grant line. So the one you're interested in, make sure that you are reading it thoroughly, and to make sure that what you're proposing is going to fit within our guidelines. Secondly, make sure that you follow the directions that we provide you. If there's an appropriate format, if there's a specific template we want you to use, make sure that you do that. If you don't follow those directions or use a wrong template, it may deem your application ineligible. Make sure you review, edit, and proof your narrative, recheck your budget calculations, have someone else read your application to make sure that it's clear, that it's consistent, or there's no missing holes. Make sure your application package is complete. After within the portal, you'll see the specific tasks that you'll need to complete, and the little green light will turn on once you complete those tasks. Once all those tasks are done, there's a submit button. So make sure that you A, complete all the tasks, and B, hit the submit button at the end. Please, please, please don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till the deadline day, because guess what? Our emails and our phones are ringing off the hook on those days. And although we really strive to give as many people that individual attention, if you wait until the last day, you might be on hold with 4 calls in front of you. So start your application early. Don't wait till the last minute. Reach out to us with questions. Tips for grant-seeking organizations. this is really important and something that you can easily do for your organization. So make sure that your organization's basic information is easily verified. And here's what I mean by that. On your website, make sure that your address and your phone is on your website. Put your federal tax ID on your website. And don't worry, this isn't like an unsafe practice. Everybody's nonprofit EIN, your tax ID is completely public knowledge, and you can find it with California Secretary of State. You can find it on irs.gov. It's completely public. But when I'm vetting your application, it's really nice and easy that I can go to the website that you've indicated on your application. I can see that the organization name matches. I can see the address matches. I can see your EIN matches. I can read about your organization and about your program. So those are all good things that you can do just to make sure that there's no question about who you are, who your organization is. I also, in that same vein, I also invite you or encourage you to make sure that your organization's up to date on Candid GuideStar or Charity Navigator. So these are two search engines that grant makers like us, but every grant maker. So if you're, these aren't tips just for California Humanities. These are tips for all grant makers and everybody who might be reviewing applications and looking at your organizations for funding. So I encourage you to go to your organization's profile on these websites. If you're not the right person to update that, then find the grants manager, your CFO, your executive director, whoever the person is that's the best person to update those sites. And make sure that your organization's information is as up to date as possible on those two portals. And if anyone has any questions specifically, reach out to me. So what happens next? Is this me as well? Let's see here. The review, after you apply, it will go through a review process. This might take 4 weeks. It might take 4 months, depending on what the grant program is. Okay. So in the guidelines document, there will always be an explanation or that tells you about what the review criteria is, and most of the times we kind of review that or divide it into quality and capacity. But the guidelines document for each individual program will go into that in depth. So make sure that you review that section, and that will help you actually craft your proposal. Our applications do go through a multi-stage review process. Again, depending on the grant program, your application might be reviewed by several of us on staff, maybe some of our board members, maybe some peer reviewers, humanities field practitioners, experts in the field. So they are reviewed by multiple people regardless of the grant program. The degree of competitiveness varies by program and the volume of applications received per round. So our grand average is 15%. Some are more, some are less, but our grant programs are very competitive, bottom line. Notification and award information. Again, all of this information is noted in those guideline documents. So how long your application will be under review, when to expect an email notification on whether it's a yay or a nay. After you do receive a declination notice or an award certificate, you do have the option of obtaining the reviewer comments. And if you don't make it the first time, we absolutely will welcome a revised application in the next round. Also, the schedule for disbursement of funds does vary by program. Sometimes it's one lump sum, sometimes it's divided into 3 parts, and those will all be explained in guidelines documents.
Yeah, great. And I just wanted to jump in as we're rounding out the hour and wanted to share a couple tips on what makes a project and proposal stand out. As you've heard throughout all of our presentations today, the humanities are central to successful California Humanities grant projects. So in whatever format your project will take, we're always looking for a proposal that very explicitly states that the humanities are a central engagement, a central concern, a central exploration, and not tangential. We're also looking for projects that are audience-centered and publicly accessible. And I know there were some questions about barriers and so forth. It really varies from program to program. So this is where we encourage you to take a look at the website, at the guidelines, and even at some of the previously funded projects, which are all available on the specific grant program's website. So you can see what that means. And additionally, always reach out to a program officer to find out more about their program. Additionally, we're looking for projects that are responsive to community interests, to the needs, to the concerns of that community that the program is serving. We're looking for projects that are ambitious, but also realistic given the timeline and the budgets that each project is working with. And additionally, we're looking for projects, especially in CDP, that can reach both statewide and national audiences. And we have a few more tips. And similarly, we're looking for budgets that are sound and reasonable. All the costs make sense. The expenses, and I think we had a question about this relating to quick grants, that they relate to the goal of program implementation. So if you have just quick grants or just California Humanities funds, or you have other sources of funds that make up that one-to-one match, that you are demonstrating that the full range of costs necessary to implementing a really successful program have been considered and those bases are covered. We're also looking to see project teams that have the needed capacity to implement a successful program so that the personnel are both qualified and have relevant expertise and resources. And last but not least, that the proposal demonstrates a commitment to the project on the part of partners, community members, and anyone else that's collaborating with that project director.
All right, so we've got about a minute or two left of content, and then we'll get into all the questions. So if you are issued an award letter, we will ask you to sign a grant agreement. We will ask you to attend an orientation session, and that will familiarize you with all of the grant requirements, what is expected of you and your project. We'll talk about if you do have any major changes, what you need to do to make those changes happen. You'll need to make sure that California Humanities and the NEH are properly attributed, acknowledged in your public programming, any publicity and marketing materials, and keep us informed about project activities and events. We'll definitely go through all this more in detail if you are indeed awarded. Next slide. You'll also be monitoring your progress towards your objectives that you set forth in your proposal. We'll make sure that you are securing your matching contributions if they are required. And then at the very end, you'll submit a final report with any project documentation, a self-evaluation of yourself as a project director and as a project of as a whole, your final budget information, marketing materials, and all of that sort of thing, any collateral and whatnot. And then after that final report is submitted, if there is any if there's a balance on your account, you'll be sent any remaining funds. All right, so here's all of our contact information. Feel free to get in touch with us at any time. We're here to help. We're here to answer your questions. Follow us on social media. You can join our newsletter if you don't already see that. If you don't already receive that, you can sign up at calhum.org, and Beth maybe has already put it in the chat for you as well.
Great. Thanks to those of you who have submitted questions. We have about 5 marked to answer here. Feel free to put in a few more. I'm seeing one question here. Can you speak more about in-kind grant fund matching? So I can take a stab at this, and then if program officers or Brett want to jump in. So when it's time to match your grant funds, the one limit is that you cannot match them with federal sources, as we mentioned earlier. Apart from that, there's great flexibility in the way that you match your grant funds. You can do it through in-kind services or donations. Perhaps you're using a meeting space that's been donated to you. Perhaps you're using volunteer or intern time that has been donated, or you yourself will be donating some hours of work to this project. Those would be some ways to meet your in-kind match. You can also do it through goods and services. If a local bakery donates some donuts to your meeting, anything on this scale can be counted towards your in-kind match. I also will just say there's no need to worry. We almost never have heard from our grantees that they've struggled to meet their match through our guidelines. It's very possible, and you have your whole grant period to make the match. It does not have to be in place at the time of application. Anyone else on in-kind matching? Okay, moving on. John, you're on camera. I see there's a question for you here. Do you fund documentary outreach? We've just completed a film. We'd like to show it across California.
Yeah, so good question. So not through the California Documentary Project, no, but potentially through the Humanities for All programs if it's, if it aligns with the goals and intent of those grants.
Excellent. Gloria is asking, how does one find a humanities expert to work with? John, do you want to start with that one too?
Yeah, I'll take a stab, and then Felicia, I see you're on camera too. Yeah, so, advisors are people who have, as you've explained, are people who have some expertise to bring to bear on your project. And, you can research online to see who's written about it, who's studied about it. You can look around at a local college or university. Oftentimes journalists, at least for CDP, can play a good role because they've researched and studied this project already. It's a little bit of a research project, I guess. I don't know, Felicia, what would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, program officers are here to help you with that too. So if you do have questions, pertinent to your whatever it is that you want to do, I'd suggest that you contact, the relevant program officer, and we're happy to work with you, over email or have a phone conversation with you. But yeah, like John said, I think, you're looking for somebody who can enrich the humanities content of your project, either by adding their knowledge and expertise in the subject matter, whatever the subject matter that you're addressing might be. They could be an academic, they could be a culture bearer, they could be, what we call a community scholar, journalist, somebody who works for the Historical Society, sometimes even, librarians, archivists, teachers who are knowledgeable about the subject, even if they're not full-fledged academics. Those kinds of folks can be helpful to you. They could also be kind of a methodological expert. So if you're interested in doing an oral history project or doing a mini documentary or curating an exhibit, you might want to tap somebody who has those kinds of humanities skills, but more in the practical realm of, doing oral history or exhibit curation or something of that nature.
And can I just add one last point to that, which is I would love to emphasize the importance of culture bearers, people with lived experience, particularly for the documentary grant. If you're doing a project about a community other than your own, it's really advisable to have a representative of that community serving as a culture bearer advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just one last question here. It's an interesting one. Are there any subjects you wouldn't fund?
I think if you look at the list of funded projects, you'll probably see just about everything on that list in terms of subject matter. I think what we don't fund, though, are projects that do not meet the definition, our definition of what constitutes public humanities. So again, that goes to the importance of your project being humanities-centered, really focused on fostering learning, exploration of ideas, exchange of ideas, openness to multiple perspectives, encouraging respectful dialogue and exchange of views. Things that might kind of fall outside of that would be what we call advocacy, which is promotion of a particular political or ideological point of view, or legislation, lobbying, or projects, that are really, fundamentally performing arts, expressive arts, creative arts based, or social service based.
Yeah, and I'll just add that at the same time, we do want these projects to be accessible to other audiences. So if your subject is so niche or so narrow that it can't necessarily transcend, that might not be the most effective, at least again, talking about the documentary grant. But I would say, I think we're open to at least considering all subject matter, depending on how it's treated.
Yes, it's all about the approach and the accessibility. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your questions. I think that was our last for today. So we leave you with our contact information, our social media handles. Please do follow our e-news. That monthly update is a great way to stay connected to upcoming funding opportunities. Many thanks to my colleagues for their presentations today, and thanks to all of you for your attention and attendance. And if you can, let us know. Do you feel likely to apply for a grant after this webinar? If you have other feedback about the webinar, feel free to send me an email too at kvig@calhum.org. We're always very happy to receive feedback to help us improve these sessions. Okay, great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.